Hi, I'm Sam Candy. Welcome to Sustain Talks. Today I'm joined by Louise Stevens. Louise has her own consultancy, Stevens.Earth, and held the position as head of sustainability and circular economy at Innocent Drinks for over 19 years. Wow, what a career. Really good to have you here, Louise. How are you?
Thank you. Yeah, really good. Really good to be here. Thank you, Sam.
So look, I want to sort of start by hearing more about that amazing career. You started long before people were talking about sustainability as they are now. So please tell us how it all started.
Well, so I joined Innocent Drinks at the tender age of 22, and it was a company that absolutely no one had heard of, including myself. So it felt like a bit of a shot in the dark. And honestly, it was just an amazing privilege to get that opportunity to join a business in its startup phase. So it was still really kind of messy, all hands on deck. And my role, I didn't join as a sustainability professional. I joined as part of the supply chain team. So me and one other person between us were in charge of all of the making of the smoothies and getting the smoothies to the customers. And I was in that supply chain function actually for 7 years. So saw the business go through kind of astronomical growth, but also really learned about the heartland of sustainability. Because if you're working in the consumer goods sector at all, most of your impacts will be in your supply chain. So I learned all about how you can start to improve those. And the thing that was amazing from the first day that I joined, whilst back in 2001, no, businesses didn't have sustainability strategies. We didn't have a sustainability manager. But the three founders had a mission to build a business that they were proud of. And every employee wanted to be part of building a business that was going to help make people's lives a bit better and leave things better than we found them. But that was as simple as sustainability was. And it manifests in things like, I'd been there 2 years, I think, when one of the founders stood up and said, "Great news, we are now on sale somewhere other than just West London. We've made it to East London, made it to all these other places. So our sales are the biggest they've ever been. But I've got this nagging feeling of what happens to all our plastic bottles after they've drunk the smoothies. Is there any way we could get them back and put them back into the next bottle?" And so that was our first dabbling with the circular economy. Again, long before I'd done my master's degree in sustainability and got really into the nooks and crannies of circular economy. It was just that really basic, ask a question. It feels like the right thing to do. How do we do it?
Yeah,
so, and that was my start. And then obviously I then went on to being part of the sustainability function, and I was head of sustainability for a number of years.
So tell me a bit more about that, that later journey, and very well known for their sustainability. You must have been a part of that and leading that and making decisions to evolve that sustainability journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as the business grew, it became really interesting to formalize what had happened very organically in those early days, formalize that process for making sure when you take a big business decision, which in a FMCG business is normally around what new product are we going to make next, really, or what new market are we going to reach and how are we going to get there. Those big decisions, you've got a really strong sustainability process built into it, because you can't rely on the fact back in the early days where you were kind of all at the table and you can make sure, I just heard, Jemima saying we're going to do this thing. Can we just make sure we use recycled paper? Like it became something that had to be more and more sophisticated. So I think what I've loved is being part of a business with 14 people right through to at the point that I left in 2020. I think we're nearly 800, 900 people. That journey, and that's why I love now working with clients of all sizes, because it's either a flashback to the early days or it's what I learned about being in a bigger business, about how you've got to be a bit more sophisticated how you embed sustainability. Number one, sophisticated, but number two, the thing that I'm really passionate about is engagement. How do you actually really engage everyone in a way that it means something to them? And it's not just me coming and giving them an extra piece of work to do. And they just, it's getting over that feeling of them having a set of objectives and then me coming along with something to conflict with them. So that was my passion. And I think where we got to, and this coincided with when we became a B-Corp. back in 2018 was we were able to get a sustainability objective onto everybody's annual objectives. And then suddenly it just leveled up the balance a bit. And then that radiated through to our annual bonuses. It was on the company scorecard. So the B-Corp score actually directly related to everyone's annual bonus. So I think those big changes towards the end, I'm really proud of being a part of getting those through. And you didn't need them at the start, you really needed them at the end.
Yeah. Were you part of going through the B Corp process then? Were you leading?
I was. I'm not going to lie. The point that we were doing it, our business was already very complex, and and it became apparent that the B Corp process, it's got so many nuances to it. And if your business is simple, crack on and go through the BIA yourself. If it's big and complicated like ours was, specifically the supply chain, getting the help of a B Corp consultant who really knows how to navigate those nooks and crannies. So we did go for that route. Yeah. And I think also as well, our team was only so big and we didn't want to take the brakes off all the stuff that was already in motion. All of our work around improving our packaging and ingredients, sustainable agriculture and sustainable ingredient sourcing was one of our absolute priorities, and what we really became famous for as a brand in the sustainability circles. So we just didn't want to take our foot off the gas of either of those. So we brought someone in to lead the B Corp process.
It's understandable. It's such a massive process. And I was speaking to someone the other day and they said they're a year and a half into the process. And, you know, you've got to really want to do it. It's got to have so much meaning to you. I think like it's so sad to me when I listen to you and how long you've been working in sustainability with a brand like that, and they obviously have been doing it because it comes from their heart. And then you get some news saying Innocent TV ad banned for claiming its drinks help the environment. That's hard, right?
Yeah, really hard. So the kind of the new piece of legislation that came through in the UK around greenwashing, I think was really important. I think it's quite clear cut actually, and well put together in terms of how you interpret it for labeling, for static copy websites. I think how it's interpreted in creative execution in like a short video or a TV ad that was animated. I mean, it couldn't have been more of a creative execution. I think is really, really difficult. And I think what I fear is if a brand like Innocent, who I know firsthand, we put so much of the groundwork in to be able to say hand on heart, all of our ingredient supply chains are, audited, and we know that we're sourcing sustainably, and we know that, over 50% of all the plastic is recycled plastic. We've got all these concrete claims that we are confident about. And yet if we get kind of hauled over the coals, I can imagine there's going to be a whole heap of other brands, and more worryingly, bigger brands who can have a bigger impact. We're going to see that and go, oh, I think we best not talk about sustainability then, because if they're getting told off, just think of all the chinks in our armor. But it's really complicated, because I think, like I said at the start of this, the legislation is really important. Greenwashing is terrible, and misleading consumers has got to stop. But as I've said previous to that, engagement is one of the things I'm most passionate about. And I think if we don't keep that drumbeat, keep talking about it, and keep talking about it in a positive way, as in you can help all these problems in the world by doing this or buying that or not buying this, I just think we're going to lose so much of the population. I've heard so many people saying it to me recently. It's just too depressing. I'm going to switch off from it. So I think it's really complicated. And I think I'd already left Innocent when the advert was banned, but talking to my colleagues still there, they weren't able to get really clear guidance on what they should do and what they can say if they did do was wrong. So I think it's going to take a while for that to become clearer, and we need to get to a place where people do feel confident talking about and celebrating the good things their product or their company is doing.
It's almost like the sustainability professionals who live and breathe it every day probably need to spend time with the marketing professionals in their businesses and really sort of go through the detail. And you don't know whether they did have sign off, whether the sustainability team had sign off of the advert. And I think that's a really important lesson that, you know, one of the most important people to understand sustainability is marketeers. I want to sort of understand a bit deeper about, you know, you've obviously done your masters, what sustainability truly means to you.
I love that question because it's changed. It's changed dramatically. So I did my master's in 2008, and back then it was very much about kind of maintaining equilibrium and not doing harm. For me now, sustainability means building a better future, because we are unfortunately already in a situation where we've kind of messed things up quite a lot. And back in 2008, it didn't really feel quite so bleak. It felt like actually things were still mostly okay. It's not. There's issues across the globe with weather patterns, with ecosystems, and actually, I think it's about making things better than they are today. Building a better future. I said building because it's hands-on now. It's not just talking about it anymore. We actually need to be really taking that action and making material steps. And then future, like we've got to keep looking ahead. We've got to keep, you know, visualizing what it is we want to achieve. And I think one of my greatest role models is Christiana Figueres, the lady who made the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement a possibility. And she did that by being a relentless optimist and by building that vision of a future that everyone wanted. So yeah, I think building a better future is what it means to me. And I've always got Christiana on my shoulder.
Yeah.
Eternally optimistic, believing we can do it.
Do you, I mean, you know, for a lot of businesses today, they might say, yeah, but am I going to make a difference? Do you think that everyone can make a difference and they should do something?
100%. I believe that with every ounce of my being, there is just no way that we can achieve what we need to achieve in isolation. There's no one single organization, government, person. It just simply is. It's not human nature. You know, we all know about the tragedy of the commons. If people all ignore something, it'll just fade away and die. And actually, if everyone engages and gets behind something, wow, how powerful are we? That's, you know, that's who we are as a human race. And so I think believing that you can be part of the solution and knowing that everyone around you is all working towards the same goal, that's the only way we're going to fix this.
So what should a business focus on? You know, they're starting out, they've heard all the terms, they're thinking, how are we ever going to get to net zero? What should their key focus be on?
So I would say to any business who's starting out, who at the moment don't know how to involve sustainability in their business, I think there's three things I would say to them. First of all, set a sustainability vision. Secondly, build a plan. And thirdly, just crack on and do something. So I'll explain all of those. So set a sustainability vision. This is an aspect that I love working on with my clients and really getting under the skin of the brand and the people at the brand, and working about what makes them tick. But anyone, whether you're a founder, whether you're a junior, whether you're a member of a senior team in a business, anyone can start that process of just thinking about what is it that actually really moves you as a human? What is it that you know about your business that you think could be a relevant impact area or a relevant cause that you might want to be a part of? What is it that stands out and that you want to be proud of when you look back at what you did? Secondly, make a plan. So then just start to think about, if you know that you make a service, just think about who's using your service, or if you're making a product, what does it take to make that product? And just start to try and chop up what you can see of your business into 3 bite-sized chunks. And those could be your priority areas that you can start thinking about making more sustainable. That is the very roughest starting point of a strategy. Obviously, again, when I work with clients, we get right under the skin and get into the layer of detail below that. But anyone can just start by just taking a step back and thinking, well, do you know what? I make apple juice. Well, I've got to think about where the apples come from.
Yeah.
And then lastly, get cracking. at any point it will be worth you getting a sustainability professional to help you, just to sense check what you're doing, but you don't need one. You can just get off the blocks, just anything that you've made on that plan, just get started, just start asking questions, and you'll follow a thread to making a better product, better business.
That's such great advice. And your experience, you've been working in FMCG, with packaging, with supply chain. There's lots of changes going on in packaging at the moment. What are your views on that?
Yeah, interesting. Sustainable packaging has definitely it's really evolved over the years, and I believe quite passionately that the biggest challenge facing our planet is climate change, and that any approach to sustainable packaging, really, a sustainable packaging strategy really should sit within your climate work. So that is not the view that everyone will hold, but that's what I passionately believe and what I saw firsthand at Innocent Drinks, where we used recycled plastic. And I've already told you, we were the world's first food grade recycled plastic bottle we were using for our smoothies back in 2007. So we've been working with recycled plastic for decades. And one of the main reasons that we did it originally was actually less about, like, no one knew, there was no talk of plastic pollution being an issue back in 2007. The reason we did it was to reduce our carbon footprint. And it still remains one of the biggest benefits of using plastic. Now, what we've got an issue with plastic is that we're just not respecting it and using it correctly. So I believe that any packaging strategy has got to, first and foremost, got to take climate into account. And only then can you move on to the next level of the hierarchy is, okay, how is my product being used? If I'm having to use plastic because it's the lowest carbon, is it being recycled? Is it as lightweight as possible? Do I have any other way of reducing the amount of it that I use? And we've just become lazy with plastic. We're just using more than we need to, and we're not moving fast enough to make sure every piece of it's being recycled. But when I work with my clients, I talk to them about building a sustainable plastics future rather than one without any in. I feel like we need plastic version 2.0, which is it's as minimal as it needs to be. And then if it ever accidentally ended up in nature because it hadn't been reused or recycled, it has an additive in it that means it could break down safely. And I've worked with a company, they've already invented that all of this exists, but I believe we need to move holistically towards a sustainable plastic future.
So if it already exists, why aren't people using it?
In a lot of cases, cost.
Really?
And it's down to priorities. So if a company's prioritizing going plastic free, then they won't be looking into it. Or if they're prioritizing lightweighting, fine, but then they need to very quickly, and that's the right thing to do. Just, I reduce, reuse, recycle. It's unequivocal. We have to use less plastic than we have been doing. We've got lazy. It's too cheap and easy. We can cut it right back, but you can't move away from the fact that packaging isn't the devil. 8% of global carbon emissions every year are unavoidably created by food waste. And so many of that, so not all of them, but a lot of that could be avoided if it was correctly packaged and stored and transported. And that's the role of plastic, is to try and take a dent out of that 8%. So, yeah.
You work a lot in the circular economy. Do you have any examples of how you've seen that work really well?
Wow, circular economy can mean a few things. Obviously, my main experience is working with plastic bottles and recycled plastic at Innocent, and seeing how, you can radically reduce your inputs and your carbon footprint and build a more sustainable business model. So a linear economy is what came out of the Industrial Revolution, the sort of take, make, use, chuck. So it's just a straight line. You end up with huge piles of rubbish at the end and resources depleted. The whole point of a circular economy is one where you're taking an initial resource, but then you can reprocess it after its initial use, and it goes back around the loop again. So obviously with PETs, a type of plastic, that's what plastic bottles are made of, that works really, really well. But interestingly, is a sector I've been learning about a bit more recently, is the textile sector. and there's some really fantastic new materials. And there's one called Tencel, which is made from FSC certified beech trees, and beech forests need a lot less input than cotton or bamboo or any of these other crops. And the process of then turning those trees into beautiful fabric is a completely closed loop manufacturing system. Is one of the issues you have. For instance, bamboo, that's actually got low agricultural inputs, but the process of taking it from bamboo and turning it into a fabric has lots of terrible outputs and lots of chemicals are used. But the closed loop system for making Tencel, you keep 98% of all water, energy, chemicals in the loop going round and round again, making endless batches of this beautiful fabric. So yeah, a closed loop could be the physical thing that the consumer ends up with getting back into the loop, or it could be simply within a manufacturing process, just reducing all those inputs that are needed.
There's just so much to think about, isn't there?
So much to think about.
Yeah.
And all of those things save money as well. You know, that's sort of that's where sustainability really is the golden ticket, where it can actually save money.
Yeah, and I don't think people realise that, do they? They always think it as a cost, but I've seen a lot of sustainability consultants that have said, if I can show you how you can reduce your costs, you know, then that's going to help with also having them work with them. But you mentioned to me when we spoke before, actually, about the deposit return scheme.
Yes. So yeah, back to those plastic bottles. So deposit return schemes are something that we used to have in this country a really long time ago, where after you've drunk your bottle, you take it back to the shop, and you paid, you know, back then probably 2 pence more, and you got your 2 pence back. In modern money, we're probably looking more like 25 pence. But the idea is to bring back a scheme like that, and it will either be a case of taking it back to a shop, but I've been working with an amazing agency that are developing a digital DRS solution. So it should be possible to have a label on your bottle so that you can scan it once you've used it and drunk it, and still put it in your curbside recycling, rather than having to take it to a reverse vending machine in a shop. Yeah, but in continental Europe, this has been in place. It never went away. It's just been there for decades. So Scandinavia, Germany, parts of France, they have deposit return schemes where people take them back to shops and put them in these reverse vending machines and get their money back.
Yeah, people shouldn't need that kind of encouragement. It's so easy to recycle these days. Well, I mean, it is for me. It's my bin day to day, and you know, I try to use as little amount of plastic as possible. With fruit, I know I always buy sort of loose fruit on its own and go to a local fruit shop, and I think that is returning with a lot of people. But a lot of companies are saying, you know, that they can't reduce their carbon footprint, or they've tried as much as they can, and then they switch to offsetting. What are your views on offsetting?
Yeah, anyone who's saying today that they can't reduce their footprint anymore, that there's just no way that can be correct. Again, it depends on the sort of business. If they are a small service agency or someone that doesn't have a big supply chain, then that's one thing. But if you've got a supply chain, if you've got actual physical parts to your business, physical inputs, there's no way that's the truth, because every day, every month, every year, new ways of running things more efficiently are invented, developed, rolled out. And we've got, you know, we're saying we've got a period of at least the next 10 years to be just keeping on chipping away at that. So I would encourage every business needs to build a carbon reduction plan that goes from now to 2030. And then sure, we might get to 2030 and we've run out of places to go. There will be a finite reduction of that, I'm sure. It's will be pretty much impossible to make a thing that you sell that has a total zero impact, but there is still so much to go after. And then by 2030, it's not offset we should be talking about, it's removals. Offsetting is basically you emit some carbon and you kind of pay someone else to not. Or if they're planting trees, the time lag between those trees reaching maturity and surviving to maturity and removing the carbon needed for the thing you did 10 years ago, the maths don't add up.
No.
Carbon removals is different. That's about technologies that are new and they're still being developed and deployed, and they physically remove the amount of carbon you've just put in the atmosphere.
Yeah. Have you looked
So
into those systems? Have you got any experience with that? I think that we're only just sort of
it's new.
scratching the surface of
Yeah,
it, you know.
yeah, definitely. I would love to. I don't have any clients at the moment that aren't anywhere near towards saturating their reduction plan. So all the conversations I'm personally still having are about reduce, 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 reduce.
Yeah.
It's by far the best thing to do. But if I was to work with a client who also had a lovely extra spare pot of cash that they could spend, so one pot of cash for the carbon reduction, if they had that extra budget to put into removals, then I'd be so excited to start delving.
Yeah, it's something that I'm really interested to find out more about. I think it's so lazy when companies say, "Oh, we're just going to plant some trees," and
yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's hard to say that offsets are wholly bad. Like some
yeah,
of them are genuinely positive projects. So actually, my main objection is more the mindset impact. It's the fact that a company thinks, oh, at a ridiculously cheap price, I've bought the equivalent of the carbon that I've emitted this year. I don't need to do anything else. That's my
yeah,
carbon journey done. And they don't take any more effort. That's the main objection I have to offsets.
yeah,
So if they're used responsibly and a business is going hell for leather on the reductions, then that's fine. I struggle, like, for example, if an airline is to say, oh, we've been carbon neutral for the last however many years. You've really got to be working on clean fuels.
yeah. I
And
think
that
that's
should
where
be all you're doing.
greenwashing. Yeah, I think that's where greenwashing really comes in.
It
Yeah,
is. So that's the grey area with offsetting. There's some claims which to me are just outright greenwashing, and others, they're doing something lovely, but as long as they're still going hell for leather on carbon reduction, otherwise it's a distraction and it's not a good thing.
yeah. One of the other things I find is a lot of companies are saying, you know, we've got a net zero plan, we're going to get there by 2050. And I keep thinking that, hang on, the CEO of that company is probably not going to be there by 2050. If a new CEO comes in 5 years, like those net zero goals, do you think they're too far? And do you think actually net zero is the vision for net zero is just too long away?
Well, I think that the Science-Based Target Initiative, which has become the global kind of standard for carbon accounting. I remember when we did our first carbon footprint at Innocent. It was back when probably, well, the first one I got involved with would have been around 2009, and we'd already done one before then. But the methodology we used then, by the time we did it again 2 years later, the methodology had changed. By the time we did it 2 years later, it had changed again. And it just felt like you're comparing apples with pears. We had no idea whether we'd gone up or down. And so what I love is we've now got a standard way of accounting. We've got a global standard that everyone can work towards and be comparable against in the Science-Based Targets Initiative. And then I think what they're saying is that realistically, by 2030, you need to have tried to take out approximately 50% of your footprint. So break it down into bite-sized pieces. And that is a time frame that you can't hide from as much as 2050, because like you say, it's so easy. If you're a CE now and you're just working towards 2050, you could easily kick that can.
Yeah.
But 2030, to have taken 50% out, that's best practice. And
Yeah.
if you're working towards that, I don't think you can hide from that.
And 8 years goes so quickly, doesn't it?
Doesn't it?
I know, it really does. I can't believe we're, nearly towards the end of the year now. No, no mention of that word. I just want to finish on, has there been a company, I mean, you've seen so many changes over the years, but the last year we have seen so many companies strive for sustainability goals. Is there any company that's really, really stood out and people that should look those companies up and see what they've done?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, two things to answer that. Firstly, I think the B-Corp movement's a really important one. So I think all businesses should look to that movement and to really pivot and say that business is a force for good in the world rather than business is the thing that's messing this world up. So really putting that emphasis and that power on business. We're not waiting for government to make these changes. We are on it. And so in particular, there's a B-Corp that I love. They're called Tony's Chocolonely.
Oh, I love them, yeah.
Oh, have you tried? So they make incredible chocolate.
They do.
They're a B-Corp, so they have a rounded approach to sustainability. However, in terms of their communications on pack, on website, above the line, everywhere, they are single-minded. They're single-mindedly working to fix the single biggest issue associated with making their product, which is slavery in cocoa supply chains.
Yeah.
So I love them for being an activist brand, number one. We talked about this at the start of the webinar about how actually, you know, it's a dangerous place sticking your neck up above the water and talking about a sustainability issue. But they go for it, and they've had challenges to what they've done in the past. What they were doing was good. They have now dug even deeper, and actually the standard they've developed for sourcing sustainable cocoa is so good that Ben & Jerry's are now starting to use it. So they announced last month this amazing partnership with Ben & Jerry's, and to celebrate, they've got some combined recipes. So there's a Ben & Jerry's chocolate bar and a Tony's Chocolonely ice cream coming out. So that's going to be amazing. But yeah, they have brought two big brands together to work to eliminate slavery in cocoa, and they're just pushing, and they're celebrating along the way. And yeah, I find it
collaboration. SDG 17, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I know, it's beautiful. Thank you so much. I've loved this. That's why I do these Sustain Talks, because I get to listen and learn and speak to people like you, Louise. I really appreciate your time. Thanks for joining me on Sustain Talks, and I definitely will be speaking to you very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
No.